Hello there, my hearties. In today's video, I'm going to talk about our heart scales activity board and how we went from this to this. Let's dig in. Briefly, before we get started, I need to take a moment to give credit to Elle from Elle's Reptiles for the inspiration and initial guidance on how to do a board like this. If you aren't already watching and subscribed to Elle's Reptiles, definitely go do that. She has a large quantity of great, informative videos on reptile care based on tons of her own research and experience, and she's just a pleasure to watch and learn from. Her video, Do-It-Yourself or DIY Snake Enrichment Board, is one of those great, useful videos, and it's the reason why you're watching this video on our board today. To make a board similar to ours, you're going to need a lot of supplies. The most important piece, of course, you'll need is a large flat wooden board, about 4 foot tall by 2 foot wide, which is going to be around $20 to $30 depending. If you can find one that's sanded, by the way, that's optimal, and you'll want it to be a little less than an inch thick. Do avoid cedar as it's linked to health problems in small pets and snakes, like skin lesions and respiratory damage. Pine wood also produces phenols similar to cedar, which is what gives them their famous aromatic properties, but many keepers do use kiln-dried pine products, however, so it's possible the processing of pine wood reduces the phenol levels enough to be safe. As an extra precaution, we did choose to avoid pine products. There will be links to relevant research in the description if you're curious, and if you have some information that you'd like to share on it, please drop a comment below and I'd love to look into it. The other supplies you're going to need are wooden dowels, non-toxic acrylic paint as well as paint brushes, and liquid gesso or gesso, sandpaper and a saw, white PVC tubes and fittings, wood screws and pipe straps, wood glue, a power drill, shelf brackets, storage trays, and a small rope net. I have provided this list in the description along with links to everything. I began the activity board by laying out the plywood on some cardboard, prepped all my paints and brushes, and you don't have to get too fancy. I got some extra things like a paint roller to color the background in faster, and stencils to help me add little flying bugs and leaves and such. I also got cardboard letters to add our logo to the top of the board. You can paint it however you like, of course, and making it look pretty was half the fun. If you also choose to paint the PVC piping like I did, in order for the paint to stick to the smooth plastic, you'll want to first sand it. I used a 240 grit. Rinse it off in water and then dry thoroughly. Then once you sand it and you've washed and dried it, you want to coat it in a thin layer of liquid gesso paint. Without these steps, your acrylic paint is likely to bead up or slide right down the piping or smear way too easily. These steps give the paint something to grab onto and ensures it will not look streaky. You can also paint your wooden dowels. I do suggest doing that after you cut them, however, if you're going to paint them. Also, because snakes are dichromatic, meaning they see only the primary colors of blue and green, I tried to make sure I included a lot of blues and greens in our board, but I also added other colors to really make it pop. Once everything is painted the way you like, then you can start making pilot holes and drilling your pieces onto your board. We started with the shelf brackets at the bottom. Elle had a great trick for the board in her video to prevent it from falling forward with the snake's weight, and that was to add these to the bottom of the front of the board. So first we plotted out where the screws would go, and then we drilled the pilot holes before screwing the brackets onto the bottom of the board. Next, we added pilot holes to the PVC pipe pieces using a 7/64 drill bit. We made these pre-drilled holes so that we could use the wood screws that we purchased to screw the PVC fittings into the activity board with ease.
You want to do this on a flat surface, preferably something you can drill through. This is a giant cardboard box that came with some office chairs that we got. So we just kind of drill through this whenever we need something behind it. If you have something better, that's probably better. So you just want to line it up against something flat, and then about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge, and you're going to come kind of at an angle so you have room to drill the screw through later, and just very slowly start because it slips until you get a nice little divot in there. Once you get the divot in there, then you can actually speed it up. Nice little pilot hole, and then the wood screw will go right through. Cool.
We repeated this process with all of the dowels and everything else that we planned to put onto the board. Now, before we put any pilot holes into the board itself, I laid out the dowels, PVC, and other items on the board in the places that I wanted them, then marked those spots with a pencil. It worked best for me to use an easy code to remember where I was going to want everything. I wrote D next to the pilot hole markers for the places where I wanted dowels, P next to the ones where I wanted PVC, and then I wrote R for red or B for blue and so on, so I can remember the color of dowel I wanted in each spot. I also laid out all the dowels in order from left to right, top to bottom, so as I was grabbing them to drill into the board, I'd be picking them up in the right order. For the PVC pieces, it was also necessary to mark where the pre-drilled holes were, so that we knew not only where we wanted to place those pieces on the board, but the precise spots to place the pilot holes for them. Once we had drilled all of our pilot holes into both the board itself and all the pieces to go onto it, we were finally able to start drilling our pieces into the board. Now, originally for the little net that we placed on this board, which has by far been the most used activity on our board by our snakes, other than just slithering along the top of the board itself, we had gotten these hooks to hold the net. So we drilled 2 directly into the board, and then we put 2 into the bottoms of 2 dowels so that the net would come up off the board. But then when we did a quick test run with a Nara, we quickly realized that this was too dangerous. And the reason was that the hooks would allow a snake's head to go through it, but not their body, and they could get stuck, squished, or otherwise injured by trying to go through these hooks. So we removed them and ended up replacing them with these small pipe straps, and those ended up working perfectly and were much safer. And in order to still have that neat effect of the net coming off the board, we simply screwed the other side of the net directly into the ends of the dowels that we had originally placed the hooks on, and that worked out just fine. Something I haven't yet mentioned anywhere else is that before we drilled our dowels into the board, we also put a thick-ish layer of wood glue around the drill hole. It did feel like a necessary step to help ensure there would be little to no wobbling of the dowel, especially the longer ones, because when a snake is actually putting its weight on it, it will bend a little bit. So for this reason, I also suggest not making the dowels too long and probably avoid the really thin ones. In hindsight, though I would still have multiple lengths of dowel, just for visual interest, I would stick to thicker ones and have them stick out no further than maybe 9-10 inches max. For the last step, you'll need silicone and a caulk gun. I used the GE Supreme 100% clear silicone, which has a lifetime mold-free guarantee and does not have that overpowering vile fumes that the black silicone has. I also used the Viper caulk gun if you need a good one. You'll want to coat all the tops of all the screws on the play side of the board that aren't 100% flush to prevent parts of your snake getting caught, squished, or a scale pulled off while they're playing on the board. Once you've let the silicone cure for 2 days, that's it. You're done. You now have a beautiful board. This was ours at its completion, with of course our awesome logo on top. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for.
required that when a man uses a power tool, you gotta
Do it one more time. Yeah, it works. Okay.
yeah.